Bonjour, everyone, and welcome to the 107 podcast with myself, Jacob, and my co-host Ash. Don't worry, we won't be saying any more French words because otherwise we might get picked up by Netflix. Their French obsession in this year's Drive to Survive was incredibly disappointing, considering the ridiculous amount of storylines that weren't told. And so, as you can tell, we weren't the biggest fans of this year's or this season's episodes. A little prerequisite. I'm poorly. So if you can tell, my voice is a little bit different. And I may have to cough randomly, so I do apologise. And Ash,
don't feel sorry for him.
No, don't feel sorry for me. Don't feel sorry for me at all. It's my own fault that I got sick because I didn't have enough Actimels. That's essentially what happened.
So lack of vitamin D in Denmark.
Literally, honestly. Dying. When I say die, I am dying. No, I'm kidding. So Ash will be leading the conversations, but obviously I will chime in as much as my throat / voice allows.
It's like a solo podcast this time.
Well, yeah, kinda. But yeah, so we're obviously here to talk about Drive to Survive. Ash, why don't you go through? We'll go episode by episode and talk about, how bad or good they were, because there were some good episodes. Some not so much.
It started off well, dipped in the middle, kind of got a little bit better towards the end, kind of like Aston Martin's season. But speaking of Aston Martin, they were the topic of the first episode, where it talked about Lawrence and his ideas for the team. A lot of focus on Lance with his accident. And I mean, if anyone watched the opening 5 to 10 minutes, there is a lot of memes and a lot of jokes going around about Lawrence Stroll being the Bond villain. Like, literally, when he's next on Drive to Survive, just give him the white cat and he's got it. The whole, like, Mr. Stroll doesn't like this, and just coming in on a yacht. That was just, do you know what? If anyone thinks that Drive to Survive is not as scripted as they think it is, this is just like, you know what, like Lawrence just coming on a yacht, and then through on here, right? Oh, I want you there, and say this and say that, and we'll make it look all natural. I thought it was a good episode. It showed a more human side, actually, of Lawrence Stroll when he was talking about his son, Lance, but not really too much on Fernando. Maybe because Fernando didn't want to do too much. Not really too much on the massive leap that they made. I don't think there was enough emphasis on them from what they were last year to this year. And we'll talk about it more throughout the episode on the narratives that Drive to Survive push. But a lot of missed potential there. But I definitely think it showed a different side to Lawrence Stroll and Lance as well, because I think we've said it before, Lance gets a lot of unnecessary hate.
Yeah, I think for me it was one of the better episodes in this season, and even then it wasn't great. It didn't follow Aston Martin further on in the season, and it didn't really show like the entirety of their success. Like, I know that the first episode usually just focuses on pre-season and like, everyone's back, Formula One's back, yay. But I mean, other than that, but it was still nice to see and get a little bit of backstory around Stroll and what happened to him and stuff like that. So it was a decent enough episode. I think that, and then maybe the where is it? Blah, 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 blah. The episode with Liam Lawson in. Three's a Crowd. Those were my favourite episodes.
I thought the Nick de Vries one was quite good. The Mercedes one was quite interesting as well. And yeah, that's actually I mean, I understand, like, we don't know what goes into making Drive to Survive. The wonderful people on Instagram Carlos mentioned that they only spend a few weekends with the team. They obviously have to in advance pick which race they think will be good for which team. But I just feel like there's just so much missed opportunities. Like, okay, maybe try and have some more interviews with the team. Or, again, if it was me, I'd have interviews 4 times throughout the season, right? At the beginning, like a first quarter, second quarter, and at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So then you can interview Fernando, Lawrence, and Lance at the end of the season and talk about Brazil, talk about what happened, etc., rather than trying to build everything up in one weekend or the amount of time you have it. And I understand it's difficult with drivers and someone like Lawrence Stroll who's probably extremely busy. But I think a lot of this criticism has been made for the earlier seasons, and it doesn't seem like they take it on and say like, okay, should we try something different? Because right now they're in season 6. No one's going to watch season 6 and get into Formula One. They're probably going to start from season 1. So the viewers now are existing Drive to Survive entries into Formula One and Formula One fans. So we'll touch on that at the end. But I thought the next episode was quite interesting around Nyck de Vries.
Yeah, the conversation that he had with Adrian Newey on the boat was so awkward.
That was so awkward. So like him, Sergio, and Adrian. It's like, you know, when you see the big boss and you just try to impress him for a promotion kind of thing. It was my take from it. And also the when he was confused on the steering wheel, which was the tire button. And I'm like, come on, Nick, you should know this by now. That was at Monaco. That's what 4 or 5 races in. You should know this by now. You're on the sim. And obviously, we have nowhere near the skill that Nyck de Vries has in driving the car, but you should remember those kind of things. But it was just, oh gosh. It was also, how should I...
To be fair, the storyline within this episode was actually pretty good. It followed Nyck de Vries. It didn't... I don't think it did,
and it followed
justice.
As well.
Yeah, but I don't think it did justice in sort of like showing how good Nyck de Vries actually is, because I mean he's a Formula E champion, and he had an incredible junior career. He's a very decorated driver, and so I don't think it did justice to his skill level and his success as a driver. But it was also very interesting, obviously, seeing how Daniel Ricciardo got his opportunity again, based off the wet weather test at Silverstone, and how that all came about. I think that was super interesting, and I think that I personally I didn't think that Nick was gonna set the world alight within that seat. I don't think he was really given enough time, or at the very least, I don't think he was helped enough. And I think that the lure of Daniel Ricciardo was too tempting for the management in and around AlphaTauri and Red Bull itself as well. So I think that's partly one of the reason, he was let go essentially. But the episode itself, I feel like, again, this one was reasonably good. And it's just, I'm saying reasonably good, but it's still just okay. It was interesting enough. I feel like this, for me personally, this entire season was the worst season we've had since launch. Also in episode 1, going back slightly, fake radio messages. Oh, Russell's struggling already. He hadn't even got into turn 1. How on earth is he struggling already? It's stuff like that where it just makes me go, why? Because, and this is where, I understand that the producers have, a certain amount of weekends that they can go to. They only have a certain amount of camera crews. They only have a certain amount of time with drivers, team principals within the factories, within the team HQs and stuff like that. But at the same time, they manage to mess it up almost every single year. And honestly, I'm starting to ask the question at the moment, are they doing it on purpose? Because it's ridiculous. However, this was one of the stories that they should have followed, and they actually did. They follow it up later on in the season, obviously, with Daniel Ricciardo's injury and Liam Lawson coming in and stuff like that. And I honestly felt as though those 2 episodes should have gone back to back. It almost could have been a 2-parter because it went over the entire season as well. That might have been a quite interesting way to bring everything full circle, and then also to talk about the fact that they've confirmed Daniel for next year. They're dropping Liam. They could have even teased that obviously the team is going to change its name to RB and stuff like that. So I felt like that could have been a nice little change that they could have done. And I don't think it would have impacted the rest of the series, to be honest with you.
I think this is where the forced narratives come into place. Where it's we're going to tell the story we want to tell, not the story that happened. And the Nyck de Vries episode is a prime example of showing just how hard it is to drive these cars. Yeah. Like you said, if they'd showcased, look how good Nick, which they did a little bit, but look how good Nick is. This is why he was given the seat. and then look at how difficult it actually is to drive these cars when it comes in. The lack of testing that we talked about earlier should have been the story, and they kind of painted Nick out to be like a bit of a wet towel.
Yeah, I mean, who's his manager?
I have no idea.
It's Toto Wolff. They had access to Toto Wolff. Why on earth couldn't they have asked Toto about the situation?
Probably Toto's like, no, I haven't.
He might have said no. He might have said no, but I'm just asking that question.
But that's where, there's the real story to tell is look how good this driver is. He's come in, and the pressure of Formula One, the skill it takes to drive these cars, shows that no matter where you come from or what you've done, if you don't perform, you don't perform. And maybe if they could have touched on why he found it difficult as well, would have been really good to give people like myself and you viewers insight into just like what goes into these cars.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, then the next one was Under Pressure with the Papaya team of McLaren.
Yeah.
Again, one of those ones where like they're making people out to say things, to do things, and they had that initial they had the initial conversation. Oh, okay. Let me start again. Zach Brown does not get enough credit, and I've said this before. Does not get enough credit.
I remember saying early-ish on last season, maybe around episode 9 or 10, around Baku, I want to say actually, on the podcast, I said I don't know how good of a job he's actually doing, because we were still like not really seeing results. The questions were starting to get asked of him and the leadership and the whole of McLaren, essentially. And then they obviously come back post-summer break and completely wiped the floor with everyone's expectations, and smashed it, essentially. So I would like to apologise to Mr. Brown. But also I think that he doesn't get enough credit, but neither does Andrea Stella. Neither does anyone in that new leadership setup that they have at McLaren as well.
I think with Andrea, he likes to be behind the scenes.
He does, yes. Full credit to him.
To be like in front of the camera and do the talking. And I do think Andrea is like, they had an interview with him on Sky Sports last year, and it was really good. But the initial meeting with the CEO of McLaren was, again, I don't know how much is staged. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to have an important meeting between like the big boss, which the cameras and what's really said and what's shown is different. But like it like you can see, it's like, look, we've got to perform. And then you had the meeting with the sponsors.
That was what I was just about to talk about. Yeah, that felt really staged and horrible.
Yeah, that felt like they had the actual meeting and it's like, look, can you just stay, talk about an OKX is there and all that. But again, like he's got to get the team performing well. He's got to keep the sponsors happy, because obviously essentially they're funding the team as well. And then makes it, Lando's disappointed, Lando might leave, Lando's this and Lando's that, and just like,
I mean, to be fair, there was some rumor, chatter, whatever you want to put,
there were
around Lando leaving. And Christian Horner literally said during Drive to Survive, we always keep an eye on, we're constantly keeping an eye on Lando Norris for good reason, right? So I think that they're also just playing on that rumor as well, which honestly, that's the sort of Drive to Survive things that I would expect. So that didn't annoy me or whatever. What annoyed me that was missing from this episode is that they talked about Britain. They didn't talk about how Oscar realistically only lost out on a podium because he had a bit of an odd safety car / pit stop situation. They missed Oscar Piastri's sprint race and pole, and they missed the Japanese Grand Prix where they had a double podium for the first time in a hell of a long time. I believe, actually, the first time since 2021 Monza, where Daniel Ricciardo won a race. So, and that's part of the situation, or like part of the thing where it's just like they could have carried on talking about that. They don't need or didn't need to have a camera crew there to have Will Buxton say, and McLaren carried on with their dominance. They went into the second half of the season and they picked up more constructors' points than Red Bull. And then over the top of him talking, you could have replays of Japan. You could have them celebrating with the trophies where they kiss it and it changes color, even though Max said he got that, but you get my point. Like, they could have had stuff like that. They could have shown, like, second half of the season driver standings, and they could have shown how much they had gone off compared to the first half of the season. So, especially the stuff in Qatar with Piastri, like, he's the most successful rookie since Hamilton. Like, and they didn't mention it. Like, that's where my annoyances started to creep in, because I was expecting them to cover it, and they didn't.
They have access to all the Formula One feed. They have access to the team radio, so they can bring in that footage. And okay, we can't get the team, but let's, like you said, have Will narrate, say, this is what happened in Qatar, this is what happened in X race and Y race. And that's why I was saying before, it's like, maybe spread out the interviews throughout the season. But it's just like, right, we've only got this. What story can we make out of it? And every single person, it's like, you don't need to make up a story.
Literally,
like,
everyone. One thing actually, let's segue a little bit, because we did have a few. You talked about the interviews during Drive to Survive. We did have 2 new interviewees join Drive to Survive this year, and we had Claire Williams, who I was really, really happy to see come back. I really like Claire, and it was really, really lovely to see her come back and give some insight as an ex-team principal, which is super, super insightful. Then we also had Danica Patrick, who the less we talk about her, the better, in complete honesty. But I saw a statistic from Women in Motorsport, I want to say is the account, or whatever it was. And they said that women talking on the show only made up 3.1% of the entire season. That was it.
Wow.
3.1. How on earth is it, like, when I was expecting, because I saw they were trying to calculate how much talking time they were actually, like, on screen time they had, right? I was predicting maybe 12%, but it was 3.1. And even then, 12% is low.
Danica, Claire Williams, and Susie Wolf.
Susie Wolf, sorry, they did also have Susie Wolf, but she's been on previous years, so I mean, yeah.
Oh, I'm just assuming that's who they include.
Yes.
I think this is where, obviously, it's a popularity thing and stuff. It's obviously, even us would like to say, hey, we do the reason we watch Drive to Survive is there's hidden nuggets, there's behind the scenes, right? But I think if I'm F1, FIA, FOM, Formula One Academy, I'm doing a Drive to Survive for F1 Academy. That's what they should do. And look how much the sport grew with the first season of Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Look at now what you can do with F1 Academy. And that's then also a prime example of like let's get, women into like the TV shows and like cameras and My Friends and all that fun stuff, right? Whereas I know, I'm not saying that this is the entire Netflix crew, but everything we see of like everyone is just like men kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if I'm Netflix, I'm like, okay, let's do Drive to Survive with Formula One Academy, I think, and let's open up the creation of the show to female creators.
I would have absolutely loved if they had done an entire episode on F1 Academy. That would have been absolutely incredible, especially because they had 2 episodes on Alpine, which I would argue is one of the least popular teams on the grid. And the storylines that they had during those episodes could very easily have been put into one. That's all I'm going to say. But so with this, and I would like to address part of the reason why people don't like Danica. And she has said things such as, she described F1 as a masculine sport and something that is, and I quote, not normal in the female mind. Explain that one to me. Which essentially gave some viewers, or they felt as though it was discouraging towards young girls who want to get into the sport. And for me personally, I just think that there are so many better other female representatives within the sport. Like, you've got Laura Winter, who works with Will Buxton. She is phenomenal at her job, and I don't know why Danica was picked over her. That I don't fully understand that.
They usually have like Jenny Gao, but I believe she's recovering from a medical condition.
Yes.
So yeah, I think honestly, this season the theme seemed to be invest in Formula One was the theme, right? It was like Zach Brown and the sponsors turned it around. Hey, look how good it is. And the separate Alpine episode just seemed to be like, look at all these people that have invested in Formula One. You should as well, is what it was.
It's very odd.
So,
really
so
odd.
the next episode was one of your favorite teams, Haas and Williams.
Woo! I love Haas and I love Williams as well. So this to me was a good episode. Mike, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to grow James Vowles' ego massively right now because I am about to call this man an absolute legend. I love James Vowles. Love him. He's brilliant.
I love it. He's so good. He's
so
like the guy is like, if in panic, he's got that voice that calms you down. I want to ask you though, how awkward was the scene of him walking in just saying morning to everyone? I was like, was that really needed?
No, I liked that.
Was that really needed? It's like, morning.
I liked it. I think
I felt it was just a little bit awkward and forced. I don't know what
it might have been, but for me, I thought it was absolutely fine. For me, he has so much gravitas, which is a word I very rarely use. But there's something about him that gives me belief that Williams are going to start climbing back up
because he believes it. That's why
he believes it, and I think that energy is something which Williams desperately needed. Now, I did just talk up Claire Williams as well, but I mean, like, maybe just that change of mindset. But I think that, would have benefited them. But also, was it Joss Capito? Good job,
Joss Capito.
That was it, Joss Capito. Just, again, I'm sick, bear with me. But I feel like he laid the groundwork to do really, really well, and then having James come in as well, it feels like Williams are definitely on the up, especially in comparison to Alpine, where they allegedly have engineers liking tweets and social media posts about Alpine engineers jumping ship and not doing very well, allegedly, which is hilarious. But I just think that rising from the ashes, because Williams, I mean, they won the championship most recently in 1997, the Drivers' Championship. I can't remember if they won Constructors, but they won Drivers with Villeneuve. So, like, they're not complete dog water. Like, they have history, they have pedigree, and to see them almost as like a rising phoenix is so wonderful to see. So I really genuinely wish them all the best. So that's enough of building them up. I thought it was a brilliant episode. It gave a really good insight. And then also in comparison, it had Haas, who have sort of like, they've been in down the mud. They've had not so great drivers, and now they've got a great driver pairing. And I genuinely believe a great driver pairing with Nico and with K-Mag. And that felt quite positive as well, up until where their upgrades were slipping, and then it turned into more talking around, obviously, Gunther as well. It was a bit of a shame that at the end of the episode, all they did was just go, Gunther's contract was not renewed for 2024, and then end of the episode, and that was it. That was a bit odd. It was the ending felt very flat.
I think they missed a trick as well, considering the Nick De Vries episode of Logan Sargent, because I think, again, with how we're talking about James Vowles, that's a great insight into, like, here's someone who's struggling. We've heard the team radios between Logan and James and conversations in the background. That's a great, it's like, let's see how we manage it, right? Because that's a tough situation to be in a team principal, where obviously they've got the external investors in Donaton and the sponsors. They've got a driver that's not performing on one that is. What does James do? Does he succumb to pressure? Does he think, I can save this? How is he going to treat that with Logan? And what's Logan's mental state? And how's Logan feeling?
Logan got barely any screen time.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that I think people will find interesting, right? Rather than the fake radios and all that.
It's also odd as well, because Logan is American and they're trying to grow the audience in America. So why wouldn't they have some sort of interaction or some sort of coverage of Logan? That felt really odd as well during that episode.
The only thing I could think is if they weren't, I say we're not going to do it, it's that Logan, like Max, has said no. Because
maybe.
I see what you do. And he's probably like, I'm not performing. I definitely don't want to be talking.
He didn't want to be Nick De Vries.
Exactly. But,
maybe that was
and another thing that shows how fixed Drive to Survive, not fixed in the terms of but Drive to Survive is where literally Alex Albon said, this is exactly what's going to happen. Daniel Ricciardo's going to come this, and they're going to do that. And Daniel Ricciardo's going to have this, and they're going to show this, and they have this, and they're going to have this, and it literally played out exactly.
I wanted to do an edit of Alex talking and then put the video in over the top.
Well, it's like you said in the previous one, like he had the spin, and then there was the dramatic pause, closing on Christian, closing on his family, team radio, and all that, and it's just literally just had a little spin. That was it, and then just went and put it like potentially second if he was in the race. So yeah. I mean, honestly, like that, again, I said the only reason we watch Drive to Survive is for those tiny little nuggets of information we wouldn't have seen. I'm not really too fussed about it next year. Kind of thing.
I wasn't fussed about it either. I think that for a lot of F1 fans, when Drive to Survive drops, that means the season is back. That's what it means. And there are some like, little nuggets of information that you can pluck out from there as well. And my girlfriend Shari, she watched it with me and she said it was okay. Like, she didn't say, "Oh, that was really good" or anything. She was just like, "Yeah, it was okay." And she started to slowly grow and become a bit more of a fan over the last year or so. But her as a casual fan saying, "Oh, it was okay," didn't
honestly
exactly give it much.
The best ones,
well.
and I totally understand why they don't do this anymore, was when they had the driver briefings. Do you remember they put the driver briefings?
Yeah. So
that is the content that we are looking for.
It's almost like episodes of The Office. That's what it's like, which is bloody hilarious, because in episode 10, Alonso looking directly at the camera and laughing. It was just so good. Like, that's what we want to see. Right? We know that these drivers are human. We want to see the human side of them. We don't want to see made up rubbish stories about XYZ. Like, we don't care.
Which also I don't even understand from a PR perspective, anyways, we segued quite a lot there. The next episode was around Alpine Civil War. Apparently Esteban and Pierre Gasly are the worst enemies and will murder each other.
How funny was it when they did go-karting and Ocon spat out? How funny was that?
It was funny because so good. Back.
Yeah, so good. I saw a photo over the weekend as Drive to Survive was, like the episodes were being watched, and it was Gasly winning in some karting championship, and in second place was Ocon, but it was just a photo of Ocon crying on the podium. So it was just because obviously they've been rivals since they were kids. And the not animosity, but the rivalry there, and like their relationship is obviously in tatters. And I think that they tried to make more of a story out of it and tried to say that, the performance on the racetrack was because of this rivalry between them. And that was really odd, because it just wasn't. Like, and then also when they were like, there's loads of tension, and then we're going to get rid of, I'm going to talk about both Alpine episodes at the same time, because we might as well. But then obviously, once they get rid of what's his face, Otmar at the Belgian Grand Prix, and then talking about how like the next race they did really, really well, and it's just because Otmar was gone. No, it wasn't. It was pure dumb luck. Like, what are you talking about? And then
again, this forced narrative.
Like, and then obviously Pierre's podium in the Netherlands as well, which was not pure damn luck. That was purely Pierre saying, "I want to pit now for these tires," and it was him using his wheel knowledge and his driver knowledge as one of the best drivers in the world to know exactly when to come into pit to change for inters and when to change for dries. That's what got him that podium, not the rest of the team, not their strategy. He decided to pit at those points, and it was like built up as like this amazing thing that Alpine had done. It was like, no, it was pure luck, and Ocon and Gasly knowing when to pit, because Ocon was in 10th. He did almost nothing. He just survived.
Also, they've used so much fake team radio throughout all of Drive to Survive. I don't even know what's real anymore.
I don't know what's real.
I don't even know.
Either,
like you said in the episode one, the whole George Russell. You can hear them shifting gears when they're like flat out on a straight, and you're just like, what? Why? This is exactly why teams don't want to talk to you. Why, like, Max Verstappen doesn't want to do an episode, because everyone was talking about they didn't talk about Max's dominance. It's like, probably because Max sees like this is the bullshit that they'll probably paint me out to be someone who's like super ruthless and hates everything and does this and does that, and it's just oh gosh, yeah. And again that Celebi episode also was just like, hey, invest in Alpine.
Hey, look, Ryan Reynolds.
Changes.
Look,
yeah,
Ryan
like,
Reynolds.
look, they made changes, and now they got successful. And
no,
like,
it's just. But also, they made changes, and then us knowing that this was happening during testing, that obviously these episodes were coming out, and Alpine are in the mud. So it's just so stupid. It really is stupid. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not that I didn't want to see Alpine as part of Drive to Survive, but they very easily could have condensed it all into one episode. And, you know, made it a bit better in terms of quality. It just was odd, really odd.
Well, the next episode I thought was one of the better ones because we got to see more of Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, Leap of Faith. This was around Hamilton's decision to sign a 1+1 year deal with Mercedes.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he kind of went a little bit rogue and said, look, I gave feedback on the car. I said it wasn't good. Turned around, didn't listen to me. And then a few races in, they're like, oh, actually, you know, you're right.
Yeah.
And I like how he didn't really mince his words either.
No. But I honestly don't blame him. Yeah. Because as somebody who, at work, for me personally, the amount of times where I have to go, I bloody told you, or have to stop myself from saying, I told you so, is insane. And so when you're Lewis Hamilton and you get the chance to be like, I told you so, take it. Don't blame you whatsoever, honestly.
Yeah. Agreed.
Especially when you build a dog of a car, essentially, compared to where you're used to as well. Yeah, don't blame you. But I think for me, that episode was very insightful. But it made Lewis Hamilton look like a bit of a knobhead, which I don't think is the case. Like, it painted him in a very odd way, and I didn't like that.
Well, the talk between Toto and Lewis, now I'm sure that obviously they do want to put the conversation discussions out in public.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that conversation is a lot longer than it was, but that just felt so awkward when they're just like staring. It's like, you know, you could be here for like, you know, so many years, and he's like, oh, you've got 20 years, I haven't. And they're just staring at each other. Like, these people, they've known each other for years.
Years, yeah.
It just doesn't seem like they would have that, but yeah, you know, and but yeah, it was actually a decent episode because of Lewis and the difficulties that they have. And I love the fact that Lewis basically has come outside, my 8th title was stolen.
Yeah, that was when he said that, my jaw dropped. I was like, wow.
I was like, yeah, I want to reclaim my 8th.
Reclaim my 8th. That is a direct quote. That is outrageous. And
that is literally like,
don't get me wrong. I kind of do want to see him reclaim it. I do. He deserves it, and I think that, like, we can talk about Abu Dhabi a lot, etc. Blah 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 blah. Right? Here's the thing: Max deserved to win the championship that year. Lewis deserved to win Abu Dhabi. That's the way it is. Like, I don't think either side can argue with that.
No, well, let's not have this discussion because
that's my opinion.
I disagree. Right? The season is over. 23 races then?
Yeah.
23 races. And the way it went in, Lewis would have won, or Max would have won, simple as.
Yeah, no, I know.
Max made mistakes, Lewis made mistakes, Max had crashes, Lewis had crashes, but the whole thing's like, Lewis deserved to win the race. They both deserve to win the race, and both deserve to win the championship. And there was only one. But we're not going to talk about this. We're already segueing. All right.
This is why we're a good podcast. We challenge each other.
Yeah, that's good. I like Drive to Survive.
I like Ocon and Gasly.
I like Forza Ferrari. If anyone, actually, I'm going to say this. Gunther has now been replaced by Frederick Vasseur. Fred is fucking A.
I love Fred.
I love
Fred.
His sense of humor.
Brilliant.
His everything is just brilliant. I love that in the team principal press conference where he was getting pushed by Toto. And he's like, no, I'm not talking about it.
This was
I'm not going to say it.
At Vegas.
Yeah.
No, but like, Fred was angry. And this is one of the things
I like that.
Yeah, I loved it. But this is one of the things that it comes back to for me is that we want to see the human side of the sport, and that was a very human reaction. Ferrari were screwed over. There's no other way of putting it. It's very much is it is what it is type case, but you're still more than welcome to be angry about it.
And considering what happened in the race, because it was literally Charles versus the two Red Bulls, the sides for that there, it would have been a totally different race.
They could have won the race.
Yeah.
You never know.
It also didn't really touch on Singapore much, did they?
No, didn't touch on Singapore either.
Just like the masterclass from Carlos Sainz.
They didn't talk about the driver radio where it was just like, oh, Lando's within DRS. It's like, I know, I'm giving him DRS. Like, that was insane. We posted actually a meme, which, by the way, guess how many likes this meme is sat at right now? On our podcast, social media, Instagram channel, we posted a meme, right? We have almost 1,600 followers, right? To put this in perspective. How many likes do you think this meme got? A photo.
I think it's 19,000.
It's 18,189 as of recording. Like, and it was essentially like Netflix loving Alpine, and then Max's domination and Coto Drama slightly drowning, and then properly drowned at the bottom was McLaren double podium, Piastri sprint race and pole, Mercedes in Qatar, which how on earth wasn't that touched on whatsoever? The battle in Qatar between the two Mercedes drivers and them coming together and crashing. And then also Checo's. I'm sick. I'm so sorry. Checo's second half of 24 as well. Right? But even in the comments, people were like leaving out McLaren's post-summer break performances and Carlos' it's on purpose moment in Singapore is just wrong. A minute of silence for all of them, including me, who thought Mercedes at Qatar is going to be a lit episode. Not giving us Checo versus Alonso battle that was decided by a split second was insane. And this is the thing.
Not give us anything on Checo.
Nothing on Checo whatsoever. And it's just so disappointing. Like, really, really disappointing.
And look, I understand that some drivers and some teams don't want to do it.
Yeah.
They want to limit the information. But I don't know if you heard of this guy called Floz on YouTube.
No.
So he does... Essentially, he kind of done like the Civil War video. Have you heard of that? Like Nico. So he did that, right? Now you have to think that this person's doing it with just the footage he's been given and the interviews and the racing, and he managed to make a really good story out of it.
It's very good. That documentary is brilliant.
It is doable with, and if you think the access that Netflix have, just not even interviewing people, right? And if they can't get the drivers, they've got some F1 media personalities that they could bring in. It's like, I don't know what goes into making Drive to Survive, and I'm not going to say it's this, it's that, because behind the scenes, everything's a lot harder than it looks. But after 6 seasons of the same shit, you just got to think to yourselves, like, what are you doing? Like, what actually are you doing?
Yeah, I think for me, hold on, this is what it boils down to for me, right?
Oh gosh, the keyboard is clicking away.
Right. So hold on. I'm not very well. Right. So, according to Google, Netflix is currently worth, on like market capitalization, blah 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 blah. All right, they are worth 259 billion with a big old capital B. Right. Yeah. You're telling me you can't afford one extra film crew for a production?
Excuse me, that's how they stay worth 259 billion? Excuse me?
You telling me you can't just employ one more film crew? Just one more editor, one more, you've got no money, have you? Is this why our subscription prices need to go up? Because you can't afford more film crews? Stupid. Honestly, stupid. I'm going to say something.
Oh, gosh.
Give the rights to Prime. Watch them run with it. Watch Amazon run with it. Guarantee you they'd make a better series. Guarantee it. And that's Prime, who famously aren't particularly good at TV.
I think also you have to remember, apart from the interviews like Fernando was doing, when you've got cameras on you, no matter how it comes across, you never act natural.
No,
never do.
No, of course not.
Because like people are watching and one little thing could get taken out of context, which it does with Netflix.
100%.
So because it's Drive to Survive, or DTS, where the D starts with Daniel Daniel got his episode.
He did.
Kind of got half an episode with Three's a Crowd.
He did, yeah.
Where he came in and introduced the lovable, the amazing, and the best face ever when Carlos Sainz tell them you're going to be hating the race by lap 3, Liam Lawson, who... And I'm so glad that they did this. They talked about the story with his dad about going to Singapore.
Yeah.
I was like, Drive to Survive. See, you can do it, Drive to Survive. That's the human side.
Great episode. Great episode, Three's a Crowd.
Yeah, it was a really good episode. I really like Liam Wilson.
Yeah.
I hope to see him in the next season.
This for me built up his stock even more for me.
Yeah.
Great episode, showed Liam in such a positive light, and showed that he arguably is just very unlucky that the current situation with Daniel and the seats that they have and stuff like that just shows it's very unlucky that, you know, that there just isn't quite enough seats. But for me, one way that you could have potentially have done a bit more in this episode is you could have talked about, you know, there aren't enough seats. You've got, you know, 3 drivers for 2 seats, right? Why was there zero mention whatsoever of extra teams trying to join the grid? Because there were multiple stories throughout the year.
FIA control probably a lot. Like, do not mention Andretti. Do not mention this.
It's Liberty Media. It'll be Liberty Media. FIA has almost nothing to do with it.
Sorry,
It'll be Liberty Media.
They hardly touched on that.
Yeah.
So, like,
it's just...
this will put us in a bad light. Don't put it out there.
Literally, yeah, because I think that would have been one of the things that, you know, would have been like, well, you know, like there are other teams trying to join the grid and blah blah blah. They didn't talk about, you know, Audi and the stake thing. Well, although to be fair, they might do that this year because they've had such a big rebrand in season 7 of Drive to Survive. They might do an episode around
which they are filming, by the way.
Yeah, they are filming. So season 7 is confirmed; it is coming. But it would be great for them to do an episode around stake and obviously the issues that they're having.
Well, considering Alfa Romeo not in this episode at all.
Yeah,
sorry, in the season at all.
Again, very, very odd. It's just there's just so many missed opportunities and missed windows, and I understand that there's only 10 hours of content that they could put out, but is it? Could they publish 12 episodes?
Here's the thing, right? Is I understand Liberty Media and FOM have obviously want to paint themselves in the sport, and it's gonna like and whatever they want to tell.
Yeah.
The whole big thing of the last season was Formula One are promoting their own race, which is Vegas, right?
Yeah.
They could have done an episode on what it takes to promote a race, what it takes to build the race. This is what we had to do. This is how we have to work it out with Vegas. This is where we started years beforehand. And that's really interesting. So this is what goes into an event. Because
that would have been great.
I saw the DHL. DHL did an episode on it, on what it takes to do all that. And I'm like, this is what people want to see. This is what people want to know. And they didn't touch on it at all.
Insane.
Like, at all. I was like, I don't understand. It's, and I don't know, I was very disappointed with this season. And hopefully, actually, I'm not hopeful that they'll make some changes.
We all know, right, that they're not going to fix any of this stuff in season 7. So just expect more of exactly what we've gotten before.
I just hope someone just goes online, just picks the good bits out, and then just posts it and say, "Hey, just watch this part." That's it.
Yeah, that would be great. But any other thoughts around Drive to Survive? We've been chatting now for almost 45 minutes around this. So do you have anything else? We've almost made it an entire Drive to Survive episode.
Yeah. No, we need some obvious Will Buxton quote or something like that to say, to just finish it off. Well, why do you think what? My thoughts was disappointed with the season. There was so many stories that, if I obviously waving a magic wand, I don't know the limitations. There's so many stories that they could have told. Over-reliance and overuse of the fake team radio was really, really annoying.
Russell struggling. Jog on.
And honestly, one of the reasons why I actually kind of like to watch it is I get to see Formula One in 4K.
Yeah.
That's like, so when they do have the racing scenes, wow, this is so nice in 4K.
That's one of the things. They used to have like a really good transition at some point during the episodes as well, and there wasn't a good transition once this season.
Oh yeah, because remember everyone said that the Qatar Lewis Hamilton walk would be included on the show.
It wasn't even included. Like, what's going on? Honestly, stupid.
Who knows? Your thoughts before we end up?
I don't really care at this point. Like, I'm done with DTS. Like, I'll watch it again next year.
Are you done?
I'll watch it again next year, but like, I'm not expecting. I have zero expectations now because I'm just constantly disappointed. It just was meh.
I watched it from start to finish to prep for this episode. I think next year I'm just going to pick and choose the episodes I watch.
I think that if we didn't have this podcast, I probably wouldn't have binged it within a weekend. 100%. I probably would have watched like a random episode every now and again type thing.
Yeah, I probably would like jump forward. I want to see the Ferrari one. I want to see the Mercedes one.
So yeah, but there we go. Like if we didn't have this podcast, I probably wouldn't watch the next series, but I will because it gets clicks and views and watches and streams and whatever. So it's just one of those things we're gonna talk about. Plus, it's something which is near and dear to a lot of F1 fans' hearts, essentially.
And if anyone from Drive to Survive who makes a show is listening, if you feel that you're being criticised, of course they're not. I'm just going to say it anyway. If you feel the criticism is unjust and unfair, which it may be, put out a show on Drive to Survive and say, this is how we film it. This is what we're limited by.
Just make a better show. I'm not even kidding.
No, I'm going to give them a chance to tell their story.
Make a better show, lads. Come on. Like I said, honestly, give the rights to a different broadcaster and see how good it will be.
If Liberty Media and Netflix are like that, together, they're just not going to. But we'll end it there. Thank you very much for listening. We mentioned our Instagram earlier. Please follow us on the socials. It's at the 107 Pod.
And YouTube. We're growing a lot on YouTube at the moment.
YouTube,
TikTok.
I can't remember.
Threads.
TikTok. That was the other one. Your preferred podcast platform of Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to it. And of course, we are on YouTube. But let us know your thoughts on Drive to Survive. What did you like? What didn't you like? If you could make some changes. If you were the director, what would you do? What stories would you tell? And we look forward to seeing what you say. But other than that, we will talk about Bahrain in our next episode, a little preview, and look forward to seeing you all soon.
Cheers, everyone.